All right, today we're going to be talking about recovery strategies, and this is a topic that's got a lot of attention in the recent months and years, but it's a topic that I think is also very misunderstood. And so today we're going to talk about how we use recovery strategies appropriately and how we individualize that process. All right, so the first thing to talk about is why do we want to use recovery strategies, okay? And the answer is probably not what most people expect. The answer is that we don't use recovery strategies as much as possible to speed up recovery. We use recovery strategies to prevent overtraining, and that's it, okay? A lot of people have been under the assumption that you want to use recovery strategies to speed up the recovery process as fast as possible so that you train more or do whatever, but the reality is a lot of those recovery processes and a lot of the effects of training are a part of the training process. They're a part of the adaptive processes. So if we use too many recovery strategies or we use them too frequently or too often, not only do they start to lose their effect, but the body actually will respond to training less and you'll get less of an improvement. So for example, there was a study where they used a lot of vitamin C with endurance athletes, which is of course a powerful antioxidant, and they found that it actually reduced the effectiveness of the workout in improving their aerobic fitness. Now why is this the case? Well, simply because the production of free radicals and oxidation that occurs with endurance training is part of what signals the body to improve. It's part of why the body responds and gets better. So when they minimize that from happening, they decrease the effectiveness of the training program. So for us, that means that we don't use these recovery strategies just kind of at will or as much as we can, because we can actually reduce the effectiveness of the training program and get worse results. Okay, so we only want to use recovery strategies to prevent overtraining or throughout the course of a season to make sure we're ready to perform on game day. We're well rested and well recovered for that. So those are really the two scenarios that we use these recovery strategies. We don't just use them every day, we don't use them as much as possible, and we also don't just use whichever method we feel like. We want to base our recovery strategy on how our body is actually adapting. Now, if you have Bioforce HRV or you use some other HRV method, you already understand the importance of looking at the balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems when it comes to recovery, but if you don't, let's talk about those, okay? So we realize that the body goes through two different stages of adaptation as you train. First, we have the stress, which is the sympathetic response, and that's where all the stress hormones are produced, and that's where the body is shifted into more of a sympathetic state, okay? As this is a much more short-term reaction, as we continue to train and we continue to accumulate fatigue and we train over time and have more and more stress in our body, the body will generally shift into more of a parasympathetic state. Now, the interesting thing is the better shape you're in, the higher your HRV score in Bioforce, and the more parasympathetically fit you are, the more you're going to shift into this other section or this other side of the equation faster, this parasympathetically dominant state. And these are really two different strategies the body uses to cope with stress and to adapt to it. This is the short-term kind of acute stage. This is the more long-term kind of chronic stage. And depending on which phase you're in, you want to use a different recovery strategy to restore that balance so that we don't progress into an overtraining state. Again, that's really the focus, is you want to make sure that you're using the right group of strategies, the right recovery method based on where you're at. So if you're using the Bioforce HRV system and we see that your HRV score is down below your baseline, we see that you're an amber or a red and it's down below your baseline, it means you're in a sympathetic state, okay? You'd want to use parasympathetically stimulating recovery strategies to restore that balance. If you're too sympathetic, you want to use methods that are going to restore that balance by increasing the parasympathetic function. So what are those strategies? Well, first we can use relaxation techniques, whether it's meditating, whether it's soft tissue therapy that's meant to be relaxing, whether it's stuff like sitting in a hot tub and some hot water relaxation stuff. We want to reduce the sympathetic tone, okay? So we want to use relaxation techniques. We don't want to use stuff that's going to do the opposite. We really want to try and relax ourselves. We also want to eliminate stimulants. We want to make sure we get enough sleep. We want to reduce the intensity of the training, okay, because that's the primary sympathetic driver. We can use stuff like deep water floating, which helps the lymphatic system and helps relax as well. And then we can do some active recovery strategies provided that the intensity is pretty low. Okay? All of these strategies are designed to reduce the sympathetic tone and increase the parasympathetic one so the body's brought back more into a balance. If we were to use the wrong side, if let's say we were already sympathetically dominant and we use more sympathetically minded strategies, we're going to push our bodies worse. So rather than recovery, we're going to actually slow that process down and we're going to make things worse. You've got to make sure we're using stuff to bring that sympathetic tone down. And again, the way that you're going to see that is looking at your HRV score compared to your normal average number, and if it's below your average number, this is going to be more of the menu of strategies you're going to want to use, okay? Now on the opposite side of the equation, we have the parasympathetic dominant strategies. You're going to use these ones when you see that your HRV score is much or is above your average. So let's say your average HRV score, Bioforce is an 80. All of a sudden you wake up for a few days and you're seeing your numbers in the 90s and you're seeing the amber or red indication. That tells you that your body has shifted into more of a parasympathetic recovery state and you're starting to accumulate stress. When that happens, the first thing you want to do is reduce the volume and the intensity of your program. Okay? That's going to be the primary driver of stress in general. So by reducing the overall volume intensity, you're going to help just your body get back to a more recovered state and prevent it from going worse. Okay, we also can use more intensive deep tissue therapy there, which would be considered more of a sympathetic stimulus, so it's going to help restore that balance. We can use cryotherapy, like the cold plunges and that sort of thing. We can use contrast therapy, which is the hot-cold, or the contrast therapy of the sauna routine, which you can find the article on 8weeksout.com about how I use the sauna routine. But the overall message is we want to use more things to bring down that parasympathetic tone by stimulating the sympathetic side. And these are really the best kind of simple strategies to do that. But really the take-home message is that you want to make sure you're using the right either sympathetic or parasympathetic recovery strategy to restore balance. Because again, if you're already parasympathetic and you use methods to increase parasympathetic, now we've pushed our body in the opposite direction, farther than we want it to go. We want to restore that balance between these two systems, because as we overtrain, we're going to see these systems are going to be out of balance. The autonomic function is going to reflect that accumulation of fatigue, and we're not going to be recovered and we're not going to perform. So we want to make sure we always choose the right recovery strategy for our method, and the simplest way, of course, to do that, is using HRV, because it shows us where the balance between those two systems are. Okay, so for more videos like this, make sure and visit our YouTube channel and subscribe. That's youtube.com/8WOTV. Of course, you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Joel Jamieson or /8weeksout. And you can follow me on Twitter, just twitter.com/Joel Jamieson. And of course, visit us at 8weeksout.com, where you can find more videos, articles, and our discussion forum. And we'll see you again next time. Most coaches and athletes really don't understand what conditioning is or how to develop effective training programs to include it. And the truth is that conditioning is often the difference between winning and losing.
Conditioning seems to be given short shrift, and nobody speaks about it with confidence like he does.
I created the Bioforce Certified Conditioning Coach course to solve all these problems and more.
I've done tons of other certifications. Nobody does this.
I've put over 15 years of work and understanding to give coaches a step-by-step guide to maximize performance for each and every athlete.
I'm taking a lot with me, so I couldn't write fast enough.
And it was great. It really fit in well with my schedule.
Joel's information is so valuable.
With my clients, the results that I got were amazing. I never thought possible.
This is the key to winning. This is the key to success.
Just beyond my imagination.